The sun was setting low in the sky, painting the horizon in soft orange and red. A human man named David walked slowly toward a quiet stream hidden deep inside the forest. He had been traveling for days and his throat was dry, burning with thirst. The sound of flowing water was like music to his ears. He knelt by the stream, cupped his hands, and began to drink. The water was cool, fresh, and full of life. For the first time in many hours, he felt peace. He filled his bottle, smiling, not knowing that someone was watching him from the shadows. Suddenly, "Stop!" a high-pitched voice shouted. David froze. The word echoed across the trees, sharp and angry. He turned his head quickly. There, standing no taller than his waist, was a tiny alien girl. Her eyes were large and glowing faintly, her hair wild, and her little hands balled into fists. She looked fragile, almost too young to be wandering alone, yet her voice carried fire. "You are wasting water," she yelled, pointing at him with trembling hands. David blinked in confusion. "What? Wasting water? I'm only drinking." "What are you talking about?" The girl's face tightened with anger. She marched forward, her bare feet splashing into the shallow stream. Despite her small size, she glared at him as if he had committed the greatest crime in the universe. "You let it spill," she snapped. She pointed to the ground where a few drops had fallen from his hands back into the dirt. "You think water is free? You think you can take it like it means nothing?" David raised both hands slowly, still crouched by the stream. He had met strange creatures on his travels before, but none like this. "Calm down, little one," he said softly. "It's just water. Look, the stream is endless. It flows all the way down the mountain. There's more than enough." The girl's eyes widened in horror as if he had spoken a forbidden word. "Do not say that," she shouted. "There is not enough, never enough." For a moment, David simply stared at her. The forest around them grew strangely silent. Even the birds seemed to have stopped singing. "All right," David said carefully. "If it's so important, then I'll be careful. No spilling, no wasting." But the girl didn't. "Relax." She stepped closer, almost trembling with fear and fury. Her voice dropped into a whisper. "If they see you, if they find out, you will be punished. And me too." David frowned. "Who will punish us?" She looked around nervously, as though the trees themselves were listening. "The Watchers," she said, her voice trembling. "They do not forgive." David's chest tightened. He wanted to ask more, but the girl suddenly grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "You must leave now," she cried. David gently pulled his hand free. He didn't want to scare her, but he also didn't want to leave without understanding. There was something strange about her words. He could see she was not just being dramatic, there was true terror in her eyes. "Listen," he said quietly. "I don't know who these Watchers are. But I don't mean harm, I was only thirsty." "You should not have come here," the girl hissed, stepping back, her small body trembling. "This place is forbidden for humans. If you touch the water, the Watchers will awaken. They will come. For you." David's heart beat faster. The way she spoke made him feel uneasy. Was she only a child repeating stories? Or was there something real behind this warning? The girl kept glaring at him, but her voice broke slightly. "Why did you do it? Why did you touch our life?" "Because I had no choice," David answered honestly. "I needed to survive. Just like you do." For the first time, her anger seemed to soften. Her eyes flickered with something else. Confusion, maybe even curiosity. She stared at him for a long moment, then shook her head. "You don't understand," she whispered. "But you will." She turned sharply and began running back into the forest. Her small figure vanished between the trees like a ghost, leaving only silence behind. David stayed by the stream, staring after her. His mind was full of questions. Who was she? Why did she care so much about water? And who were the Watchers she feared so much? A cold breeze passed through the forest and the water at his feet rippled strangely, as if something deep below was stirring. David felt a shiver crawl up his spine. He picked up his bottle, tightened the cap, and stood slowly. he had thought. This forest was peaceful, but now it felt different, dangerous. As he walked back toward his camp, he couldn't shake the memory of her voice, sharp and trembling with fear. You are wasting water, and they will punish you. David could not sleep that night. The girl's angry words kept echoing in his head. You are wasting water, and they will punish you. He lay on his blanket near the fire, staring up at the stars. The forest felt calm, but inside his chest, unease grew heavier with every breath. At dawn, David packed his small bag and returned to the stream. He wanted answers. The girl had vanished into the forest yesterday, but he hoped she might return. When he reached the stream, he knelt again, this time careful not to spill even a single drop. He cupped the water slowly, drank, and looked around. That was when he saw her again. The tiny alien girl stood a short distance away, watching him with narrowed eyes. Her arms were crossed, her face serious. She looked as if she hadn't slept either. You came back, she said softly, almost accusing. I needed water, David replied calmly. But I remembered what you said. No wasting. Her eyes flickered, with surprise. She stepped closer, studying him as if testing his words. You really listened? Yes, David said. And now I want to understand. Why is water so important to you? To your people? The girl hesitated, chewing her lip nervously. Finally, she whispered, Because water is life. Without it, we vanish. David tilted his head. Everyone needs water. Humans too. But you act like it's something more. Her small hands tightened into fists. It is more. Each drop has a spirit. Each drop is watched. If we waste even one, the watchers will know. They will take what they want. David frowned. Who are the watchers? The girl glanced over, her shoulder, fear flashing in her eyes. She lowered her voice. Long ago they came from the sky. They gave us rules. They said, protect the water. Never waste it. Never let outsiders drink it. If we obey, they let us live. If not... She shivered, unable to finish. David's stomach tightened. The way she spoke sounded less like a story and more like a memory passed down through generations. But water is everywhere, David argued, gently. Rivers, lakes, rain, surely the watchers can't control all of it. The girl shook her head hard. You don't understand. It is not about how much there is. It is about respect. To us, water is sacred. It belongs to them, and we are only keepers. David studied her carefully. She was so small, her clothes worn, her voice trembling, but the fire in her eyes was real. This wasn't just a child's tale. She truly believed it. He sighed and sat down on a rock by the stream. What's your name? The girl hesitated, then answered softly. Lyra. All right, Lyra, David said. My name is David. I don't want to hurt your people. I only want to survive. But you should know. Humans don't live by these rules. We don't believe water belongs to anyone. Lyra's face twisted with shock. She looked almost sick. No, that's impossible. Everyone must honor water. Everyone must fear the watchers. David shook his head. On my world, water is precious, yes, but it flows free. We drink, we bathe, we even play in it. It is a gift of nature. Lyra gasped, horrified. Play? You waste it for fun? David laughed softly, but there was no cruelty in it. Yes, sometimes we splash each other, swim in rivers, even dive in oceans. Her small body trembled. She stumbled back a step, staring at him like he was a monster. You are cursed, she whispered. Your people must all be cursed. The watchers will destroy you. For a moment, David almost felt guilty for saying the truth. But he also saw the crack in her belief. She was not sure anymore. Her eyes darted between fear and curiosity. Tell me, Lyra, David asked gently. Have you ever seen the watchers? With your own eyes? Her lips parted. She shook her head slowly. No. But the stories, they are true. They must be true. David leaned forward. Maybe the stories were made to control you. Maybe the Watchers want you to live in fear so you never question them. Lyra's hands shook, her eyes welled with tears. No, you don't understand. The machines, they are real. My mother saw them once. She said they rose from the ground when someone spilled water. They took him away. He never came back. David's breath caught. Machines? That was different. If it was true, then something real was behind these stories. Lyra wiped her eyes roughly. You will see, human. If you stay here, they will find you. And then you will believe. David wanted to argue, but something in her trembling voice stopped him. She wasn't lying. At least she believed every word she said. He stood slowly and offered his hand. Then show me, Lyra. Show me your people. Show me why you believe. She stared at his hand like it was a dangerous thing. Her tiny fingers twitched, unsure. Finally, she shook her head. No, it's too dangerous. If they see you with us, they will punish everyone. Then let me follow from a distance, David said. I won't bring harm, I just want to understand. Lyra hesitated for a long time, then finally whispered, If you are lying, you will bring death to us all. With that, she turned and began walking into the trees. David followed quietly, keeping a respectful distance. As they moved deeper into the forest, the stream widened into a narrow river, its waters glowing faintly under the sunlight. Strange carvings marked the rocks along its banks, symbols David had never seen before, glowing faintly like warnings. The forest grew darker as David followed Lyra. Sunlight barely touched the ground now, hidden by thick branches above. The air was heavy with the smell of moss and damp earth. Every step felt like he was walking into another world. Lyra moved, quickly, her tiny feet light on the forest floor. She never looked back to see if David was still following. It was as if she trusted the forest to hide her steps, and David had to be careful not to lose sight of her small figure. Finally, after what felt like hours, the trees opened into a wide clearing. David stopped in shock. There, hidden deep in the wilderness, was a village unlike anything he had seen before. Small wooden homes sat on stilts above the ground. Ropes and woven bridges connected them like spider webs. In the center, a tall stone structure stood with glowing blue markings carved into its surface, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. But what struck David the most was not the design of the homes. It was the people. Dozens of tiny aliens, just like. Lyra moved carefully around the village. Their clothes were worn, their bodies thin, and their faces carried the same tension David had seen in Lyra. And everywhere he looked, he saw the same thing: water being guarded. Children carried clay, jars with trembling hands, careful not to spill a single drop. Women filled bowls from the stream but counted each scoop like it was gold. Men stood watch by the stone structure, their eyes sharp and fearful as if waiting for something to come from the trees. David whispered to himself, "So this is why she called me wasteful." Lyra turned sharply and placed a finger over her lips. "Quiet. They must not know you are here." She led him behind a large tree at the edge of the clearing. From there, David watched in silence. Near the center of the village, an older alien, perhaps the chief, stood tall, his hair silver and his face lined with age. He raised a wooden staff carved with the same glowing symbols David had seen on the rocks by the river. The people gathered, kneeling before him. The village fell completely silent. The old chief spoke in a deep, trembling voice. "Brothers, sisters, the river has spoken again." A sign was given. The watchers stirred beneath the water. Gasps spread through the crowd. Mothers clutched, their children close, and men lowered their heads in fear. David felt his stomach tighten. Could he have caused this? Yesterday, when he drank at the stream, he had seen the strange ripples. Could that have been the sign they feared? The chief continued. "We must be careful, we must be faithful. A stranger has come near the river. If he wastes life, we all will suffer." David froze. His heart raced. Were they talking about Him? Beside him, Lyra's eyes filled with fear. She grabbed David's sleeve. "Do you see now?" she whispered. "Even the elders know. If they discover you, you will bring punishment on all of us." David's throat went dry. He had meant no harm, but here in this hidden world, even his survival act was seen as a crime. The meeting ended, and the villagers slowly returned to their tasks. The children walked in single lines, carrying jars to the stone structure. They poured water into small openings at its base. As they did, the glowing symbols brightened, humming faintly. David narrowed his eyes. It wasn't magic. It was technology. That stone wasn't just a shrine, it was a machine. He whispered to Lyra. "What is that thing?" She looked at him as if he had asked the most obvious question. "It is the heart. It belongs to the Watchers. We feed it water so it stays calm. If we stop, it will awaken them." David felt a chill run through his body. The entire village lived in fear of this machine. Every drop of water, every strict rule, they all existed because of it. "Lyra," he said slowly, "do you believe this heart is alive? Do you really think it can call the Watchers?" Her little face was pale, but her voice was firm. "I do not believe. I know. My uncle once refused to give water. That night, the ground shook. The machines came, he was taken." David clenched his fist. It could not just be a story. The way she said it, the pain in her eyes, it was real to her. But then a dangerous thought struck him. What if the heart really was a leftover alien device, still active, still watching? As he struggled with the thought, a sharp sound broke his focus. Snap. David froze. A branch had broken under his foot. The sound was small, but in the tense silence of the village, it was enough. 2 guards by the heart turned their heads sharply toward the trees. "Who's there?" one of them shouted. Lyra's eyes widened. She shoved David hard. "Run!" she hissed. David ducked behind the tree, his heart pounding in his chest. Voices rose in the clearing as the guards stepped closer. "Did you see something?" one asked. "I heard it," the other said. "Check the trees." David's breath caught. He crouched low, every muscle tense. If they found him, it wouldn't just be his life in danger. Lyra's people would suffer too. The girl pressed herself against him, her small body trembling. For the first time, she wasn't yelling at him. She was terrified. "Please," she whispered, "don't let them find you. Don't bring death to us." David closed his eyes, forcing himself to stay calm. He had survived wars, storms, and battles before. He would survive this too. But he knew one thing for certain. This hidden village was holding secrets far greater than he had ever imagined. And the deeper he went, the more dangerous the truth became. The forest around them suddenly felt alive with whispers, as if the very air was listening. David knew now that he had walked into something far larger than himself. These people weren't just protecting water, they were prisoners to an ancient pact. As they hurried back to the edge of the village, David made a silent promise to himself. He would uncover the truth behind the Watchers, the heart, and this so-called ancient rule. He could not allow an entire people to live chained by fear forever, but he also knew the cost of breaking such chains could be deadly. And the first sign of that danger was already rumbling beneath his feet. The night was heavy with silence. David sat awake near the edge of the forest, listening to every sound. Lyra lay curled beside him, but her eyes were wide open, glowing faintly in the dark. Neither of them could sleep. The memory of the heart glowing and rumbling had shaken them both. The ground trembled again, softer this time, but enough to remind David that something beneath was alive. He clenched his fists. Machines. That had to be it. Not gods, not spirits, machines, buried in the earth, waiting for a signal. Suddenly a sound cut through the night, a low metallic groan like rusted iron waking from sleep. Lyra bolted upright. "It begins," she whispered, her voice shaking. The punishment. From the center of the village, the heart flared with blue light. The glowing symbol stretched across its stone surface, burning brighter than fire. Villagers screamed and rushed from their huts, clutching their jars and bowls of water. Children cried as their mothers dragged them toward the gathering square. David stood, his jaw tight. He had seen war, he had seen death, but this fear was different. It was the fear of a people who had lived under a shadow for generations. The ground shook harder now, cracking in places near the river. Blue light poured upward through the soil like veins of fire. Then came the sound, a deep, echoing thud, 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 like the heartbeat of a giant. And then they appeared. From the earth near the river, huge figures rose, machines of black metal, their bodies insect-like with long, spindly legs and glowing eyes. They moved slowly but with terrifying weight, water dripping from their armored shells as if they had been sleeping in underground chambers. Lyra screamed and clutched David's arm. The Watchers! David narrowed his eyes. To her people they were gods, but to him they were machines, designed long ago to control through fear. The machine scanned the village with beams of blue light. Wherever the beam touched, villagers dropped to their knees, bowing low, trembling. David could see it clearly. Obedience had been trained into them by terror. One machine halted by the heart, its giant legs piercing the earth. A deep mechanical voice boomed. A drop was wasted, a rule was broken, a punishment must be given. The crowd wailed in despair. The chief raised his staff and cried out, "Forgive us, spare us, we gave the water, we gave the offering." But, the machine's cold voice replied, "A stranger touched the stream. The rule is clear. The penalty is death." David's blood ran cold. They knew. Somehow, the heart had recorded his presence, and now, these machines had come for him. Lyra turned. To him, her face pale with terror. "They mean you. If they find you, they will kill you, and us too for hiding you." David looked at her trembling hands, at the entire village bowing in fear, and something inside him hardened. He couldn't just run. If he left, they would still be punished. The machine raised one spindly arm, a beam of light sweeping across the trees. It was searching. David pulled Lyra behind a hut, crouching low. The blue beam passed only inches away. The wood sizzled faintly where the light touched, leaving a burned scar. David whispered sharply, "These aren't gods, Lyra. They're machines. Machines can be destroyed." Lyra shook her head violently. "No, they cannot be killed. They are eternal." "Nothing is eternal," David said, his voice hard. "Everything built can be broken." Another machine rose from the earth, taller than the first, its glowing eyes scanning faster now. The villagers cried louder, chanting prayers, begging for mercy. But David knew mercy was not in their programming. A decision burned in his chest. He could not stand by and watch innocent people die for him. He had to act. He grabbed a heavy branch, lying near the hut, and gripped it tight. Primitive, yes, but it was something. Lyra grabbed his sleeve in panic. "No. If you fight them, they will destroy us all." David's eyes met hers. "If I do nothing, they'll destroy you anyway." Before she could stop him, he darted out from the shadows. The beam caught him instantly, bathing him in blue light. The machines froze, focusing on him. "The stranger is found," the first machine declared. "Punishment will begin." The villagers gasped, screams rising. Some shouted for him to run, others cursed him. But David stood tall, his heart steady. He raised his voice strong and clear. "I am not your slave, and neither are they." The machine's eyes flared brighter. With a hiss, its arm transformed into a weapon, long and sharp, glowing with heat. It raised the weapon high, ready to strike. Lyra screamed, running toward him despite her fear. "No!" At that moment, the ground trembled again, harder than before. Cracks spread across the earth, water bursting upward in thin streams. The heart pulsed wildly, its blue glow spilling into the sky. The punishment had begun, and there was no turning back. David tightened his grip on the branch, staring at the towering machine. For the first time, he felt the full weight of this fight. It wasn't just for his survival. It was for Lyra, for her people, and for freedom from the chains of fear. He whispered under his breath, "Let's see if gods can bleed," and then he charged. The machine's weapon came down with a hiss, splitting the air. David rolled to the side just in time, the ground exploding where he had stood. Dirt and fire sprayed upward, burning his arm. He gritted his teeth, clutching the heavy branch like it was his only lifeline. The villagers screamed louder, scattering to the edges of the clearing. Some pressed their foreheads to the dirt, chanting for mercy. Others pulled their children into their arms. Lyra, trembling, but determined, ran to David's side. "You will die," she cried, her voice breaking. "Not if I fight smart," David replied, eyes locked on the towering machine. The machine turned, its glowing eyes fixed on him. Its metallic voice echoed, "Resistance is forbidden. Death is inevitable." David swung the branch hard against one of its spindly legs. The wood cracked against metal, useless, but the sound distracted the machine, forcing it to pause. David darted away, pulling Lyra by the hand. "Run!" he shouted. They sprinted into the forest, the ground trembling behind them as the machines followed. Each step shook the earth, branches snapping under their heavy legs. Blue beams of light swept across the trees, searching, burning, destroying. David's lungs burned, but he didn't stop. He pushed Lyra ahead of him, his mind racing. He had no weapon, no plan, but he had his will to survive. Behind them, the heart pulsed brighter, feeding energy into the machines. They screeched in unison, their metallic cries echoing through the night. "They won't stop," Lyra sobbed. "They never stop." "They will if we find a way to cut them off from the heart," David growled. She stared at him with wide, tearful eyes. "That's impossible. The heart is eternal." "Nothing is eternal," David snapped. "Everything breaks." They darted through the forest, leaping over roots and streams. The machines crashed after them, smashing trees aside like toys. David knew they couldn't outrun them forever. They needed cover. "Up there," he shouted, pointing to a ridge of rocks. They scrambled up the slope, climbing with raw desperation. The rocks shook as beams of blue light struck below, scorching the earth. When they reached the top, they collapsed, panting. David looked back down. The machines prowled below, scanning the trees. For a moment, they were safe. Lyra clutched her chest, her small body shaking. Why did you not run alone? You could have left me." David stared at her, his face firm. "Because I don't leave people behind, not on Earth, not here." Her lips trembled. Slowly, she whispered, "You are not like us. You protect." David didn't answer. He scanned the forest, his mind working. The heart powered these machines. If he could get close enough, maybe he could find a way to shut it down. But how? He had nothing but a broken branch in his fists. The machines began climbing the ridge. The ground shook again. David pulled Lyra to her feet. "We can't stay here. Move." They ran along the ridge, the moonlight guiding their path. The forest opened ahead to a rushing river. Water foamed violently as it crashed against sharp rocks. David's eyes narrowed. The machines were water-obsessed. The heart consumed it. Maybe, just maybe, water could be used against them. He grabbed Lyra's shoulders. "Listen to me. Can these machines enter the river?" She shook her head quickly. "No, they fear it. They take water only from the heart, not wild streams." David's heart raced. That was it. The heart wasn't just a machine. It was a control system. Wild water might overload them, confuse them. "Good," he said, determination burning in his eyes. "Then we use the river." The machines reached the ridge, their spindly legs clawing at the rocks. David pulled Lyra close. "When I say jump into the river," her eyes widened in horror, "it will kill us." "It's better than letting them take us," David said firmly. The machines climbed closer, their glowing eyes blinding in the dark. One raised its weapon, the air sizzling with heat. "Now!" David shouted. Together, he and Lyra leapt from the ridge. The world spun as they plunged into the icy water. The river roared around them, dragging them into its furious current. David held tight to Lyra, kicking hard to keep them above the surface. The machines screeched from the ridge, their beams of light sweeping over the water, but none followed. The river slammed them against rocks, spun them in whirlpools, dragged them deeper. Lyra gasped and clung to him, terrified. David gritted his teeth, forcing his body to fight the current. At last, the water threw them out onto a muddy bank downstream. They collapsed, coughing, shivering, but alive. Lyra pressed her forehead to the dirt, sobbing. "You saved me." David leaned back, chest heaving. His body was battered, his arms bleeding, but his mind was sharp. "We bought time. That's all. They'll come again." She lifted her head slowly, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "Then what do we do?" David stared up at the stars, his jaw set. "We find a way to destroy the heart. If we don't, your people will never be free," Lyra gasped. "Destroy the heart? That is forbidden." "So are humans drinking water," David said grimly. "And yet I did. The rules are not sacred, Lyra. They're chains. If you want to live free, you have to break them." For a long moment she was silent, torn between fear and hope. Finally, she whispered, "If you are wrong, we both die." David looked at her with steady eyes. "Then I'll make sure we die, fighting." The forest was silent again, but both of them knew the machines would return. Their only chance was to face the heart itself, together. The night was long, but David and Lyra did not rest. The river had carried them far from the village, yet the glow of the heart still pulsed faintly in the distance, a reminder of the power waiting to awaken again. David sat by the riverbank, sharpening a piece of stone against another until it formed a crude blade. His arms ached, his ribs burned from the river's fury, but his eyes never wavered. He knew what he had to do. Lyra sat close, hugging her knees. Her small body trembled, but her eyes followed him with something new. Trust. She whispered softly, "You really mean to destroy it, don't you?" David nodded. "If we don't, they'll keep hunting me, and your people will stay slaves forever." "But it is forbidden," she said, her voice barely audible. "The rule has bound us for generations. If we break it, we may all die." David looked at her firmly. "Or maybe, Lyra, if you break it, you'll finally live." Her lips trembled, caught between fear and hope. Then she nodded, slowly but surely. "Then I will help." They set out before dawn, moving through the forest like shadows. The village was in chaos when they arrived. The machines still lingered near the heart, their legs anchored in the ground like sentinels. Villagers knelt before them, whispering prayers. The chief stood at the front, staff raised, begging forgiveness. No forgiveness came. The machines stood silent, waiting, watching. David crouched behind the trees with Lyra. He studied the heart carefully. Up close, he could see that it wasn't just stone and glowing carvings, it was a machine core, cracked and ancient, drawing power from the flowing river beneath it. Pipes ran from the river straight into the heart, carrying water like fuel. "That's it," David whispered. "It feeds from the river. If we stop the flow, it dies." Lyra's eyes widened. "But the river never stops." "Then we make it stop," David replied. He pointed to the pipes. If they could be blocked, smashed, or destroyed, the heart might lose power. But the machines guarded it too closely. David's hand tightened on the stone blade. He had no army, no weapons, just himself, his will, and one frightened but brave. "Alien girl, stay behind me," he told Lyra. She shook her head. "No, I will not hide anymore." Her voice surprised him. It was not weak or trembling, it was strong. They crept closer, moving low through the tall grass. The machines scanned, slowly, their blue beams sweeping across the clearing. David timed their movements, slipping forward only when the light turned away. When they reached the pipes, David pressed the blade into a joint and shoved with all his strength. Metal groaned but held firm. Sweat dripped down his face. Suddenly, "Intruder," a machine's voice boomed. The beams turned, locking on them. The villagers screamed. The chief fell to his knees. "The stranger brings death," David roared and slammed the blade down again. Sparks flew. The pipe cracked, spraying water into the air. The heart flickered, its glow dimming for a moment. The machines screeched, their legs pounding the ground as they advanced. One swung a glowing weapon down. Lyra leapt forward, her small hands grabbing a loose stone. With a cry, she hurled it at the pipe. It struck perfectly, widening the crack. Water gushed out, flooding the ground. The heart dimmed again, its hum faltering. David grabbed her and pulled her back as the machines closed in. "Keep hitting it," he shouted. Together they smashed rock after rock against the pipes. Cracks spread, water burst free. The heart flickered wildly now, its symbols glowing and fading like a dying flame. "You break the rule," one machine thundered. "Punishment will be eternal." But David only shouted back, "No more rules, no more chains." With one final strike, the largest pipe shattered completely. A torrent of water surged out, drenching the ground. The heart shrieked, a sound not of spirit but of metal tearing. Its glow sputtered, then died. The machines froze. Their glowing eyes flickered, dimmed and went dark. One by one they collapsed, their massive bodies crashing into the dirt. The forest shook with the sound of their fall. For the first time in generations, silence followed. The villagers slowly lifted their heads, their eyes wide with disbelief. The chief dropped his staff, his mouth open. "The Watchers are gone," Lyra stepped forward, her tiny voice ringing louder than ever before. "They were never gods, they were only machines. We are free." Gasps spread through the crowd. Mothers hugged their children tighter. Men stared at the broken heart, and whispers of hope spread like fire. David stood, breathing hard, his body aching. He looked at the people, then at Lyra. She stood tall now, no longer trembling, her eyes bright with courage. The chief approached, his voice trembling. "You have broken the rule. You have doomed us." "No," David said firmly. "You were already doomed. Fear chained you. Now you have a chance to live free." The old man stared at him, then turned away, unable to argue. As the sun rose, painting the sky with gold, David sat by the river again. Lyra sat beside him, quiet for a long time. Finally, she whispered, "When you first drank, I thought you were a fool. I thought you would bring only death. But now..." She looked at him with soft eyes. "You brought us life." David smiled, faintly. "No, you brought it. You chose to fight with me." Her small hand slipped into his. Then we chose together. The river flowed free, carrying away the last glow of the broken heart. The Watchers were gone. The ancient rule was shattered. And for the first time, the hidden village breathed without fear. David looked at Lyra, at the people slowly gathering with new hope in their eyes, and knew the truth. Sometimes the bravest act is not fighting a machine. It is teaching others that they can fight too. And in that moment he realized he had not just saved water, he had saved a future.